It's more. It's so much more than a semantic distinction between saving and investing. When we use the word synonymously, it's one of the biggest reasons why we have such a problem with our money, such a problem with using our money to give us a better future.
Pat, get your wallet out.
There's an old story about a wealthy person who gave his wealth, gave his money to 3 people to manage, to handle while he was gone. To one, he gave 5 talents. Now, a talent at the time was worth about 15 years of a laborer's wages, so about 75 years worth of wages. He gave one 5, he gave another 2 talents, so 30 years, and he gave another just 1. Now, it's interesting because he gave it to them according to their past performance.
Okay, goodness lesson number 1. You see someone drop their wallet. Patrick dropped the wallet.
And that's why he gave 1 5, 1 2, and 1 1. So he went away. The one who was given 5 went to the marketplace, began to trade, used the money, and doubled it 2x, turned 75 years of labor's wages into 150 or 10 talents. The second one did the same thing. Used it in the marketplace, turned 2 into 4 talents from 30 to 60 years worth of labor's wages.
Now, what would you do?
But the third one did this, dug a hole in the ground and buried the talent. Now, when the wealthy man came back, the first man said, "Hey, I've done it. I've taken the 5, I've turned it into 10. The wealthy man said, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful with a little. I'm going to put you in charge of a lot. I'm going to give you even more." To the one who doubled it, went from 2 to 4, "Well done, good and faithful servant. I'm going to give you even more because you were faithful in a little thing." To the third one came up and started giving excuses. "I know, you're a greedy capitalist. I don't like wealthy people, so I just buried it. So here it is, you get it back."
Excuse me, sir, but I do believe you've dropped your wallet.
He said, "You're wicked. You're lazy." And then he did something. He took it from him and he gave it to the one who had 5 originally and doubled it to 10. Now, how does that story make you feel? Let's take a look. Hi, I'm James Callahan, and this is the Do-Over Show, where we try to figure out things like our money story so that we can have a better future, at least the second time around.
Billy, I need more money.
Now, that story, if you had any sympathy for the one who had the 1 talent, buried it because he had all the excuses and all the reasons, and then turned it back over, and then were surprised, like, "What's the complaint? I gave you back what you were given." The interesting thing about that is if you have sympathy for the one who buried the talent, you are a saver at heart. You're not just risk adverse, you have reasons to be risk adverse. You have excuses, you have explanations. You're just never going to accomplish anything in the marketplace, and so you say, "Nah, I'm just going to bury it because I have really good reasons. I'm a better person because I buried it." Now, that story is an old story from the Christian gospel called Matthew chapter 25. And yes, it's this traditional story, and people really struggle with getting it right, figuring it out. What does it mean? Is it rewarding sort of middle-class capitalism? Is it investing? Is it the marketplace? What is it? There's this morality tied to how they use what they're given as stewards to take care of. Not just babysit, not just bury, not just tuck under a mattress for a rainy day, but whether or not they use what they're given to advantage. They take advantage of the opportunity. Now, most of us react to the story and say, "Well, you know what? I do have sympathy for the one who buried it because, it's not always easy. It's easier to lose money than make money in the market after all. And the market's against us, and people with more money always make more money, and we always make less."
Those of you who are graduating this afternoon with high honors, awards, and distinctions, I say well done. And as I like to tell the C students, you too can be president.
Now, that little tinge of sympathy we have for the one who buried the 1 talent, it shows something about us, and that is that we have a scarcity mindset. So if I'm given something, I've got to protect it and hold it back. I don't see an upside. I don't see opportunity. I don't see an investment or an upside from investing in even my own future, your own future. It's this idea that there's only so much in limited supply, and if I have something, I'd better just hoard it or keep it and not share it, not develop it, not invest it, not put it out there, and not risk it because somebody else will take it. You see, the zero-sum game of this is if there are 100 of something and I have 1 and I want to double it to 2, that means I have to take it from somebody else. And it's this cutthroat competition where if I win, somebody else has to lose. It only has winners and losers. It's completely binary, and there is no upside to life. And that's this scarcity mindset. A scarcity mindset is just not healthy. And it cancels out, it removes from us the possibility of an upside for our future. Now, I'll give you this. The way we commonly use words like saving and investing interchangeably, we don't mean to have a big difference, and we don't mean to say that we lack a life story of increase or investment. What we simply mean is that, well, saving means it's a short-term thing. I'm just going to withhold, or I'm going to keep something back. I'm going to preserve it. I'm going to hide it. I'm going to protect it. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to look at the local coffee shop and I say, oh, $6 for a latte. Will I do that? No, I'm going to save the money. Okay, you've just saved yourself $6 on a latte. That's a short-term decision. Congratulations. Now the question is, what are you going to do with the $6? Most of us, we just spend it on something else. We just say, well, I'm not going to buy this, I'll buy that instead. And we haven't done anything more. We haven't actually saved it. We haven't protected it at all. Saving only works in the short term if we're going to do something with it in the long term. And that's where investing comes in. Now, I know what you're thinking. $6? Law of large number tells us that $6 is not going to change the world or even change most of our worlds. And you're right. After all, 1% of $6 million is $60,000. 1% of $6 is 6 cents. Which would you rather have, $60,000 or 6 cents? Well, of course, the law of large numbers tells us that there's a difference, and there's this capacity where we get to what the cost of living is, what it costs to live. You can't live on 6 cents. You can live on $60,000. So that means that we have to get to that point in which we can actually survive. Now, how do you move from 6 cents to $60,000? How do you go from $6 to 6 million? That's the difference between saving and investing. So how do we go from being savers to investors? Don't despise small things. Small good decisions, those little things that add up and become exponentially greater than the sum of their total parts. That's what we're after, and that's the move from savings to investing. It's like James Clear in Atomic Habits. I'm a big fan of the 1% rule, that is doing 1% thing different every single day actually has a compounding and exponential upside. So the move from saving to investing, even or especially with small things, gives us the ability to give ourselves the permission to say, wait a minute, I can do this. And it's much easier to start with small things than it is to say, I'm going to be a millionaire tomorrow. Instead of saying, I'm going to take the $6 that I didn't spend today and I'm going to invest it, and I'm not going to spend it tomorrow, and I'm going to invest that too. So now the investments come down to whether I'm going to prefer things that have value or growth to them. Now, value are things that return but don't grow a lot. That is, say, an investment in a REIT, a real estate investment trust, where you get quarterly or monthly dividends from the REIT, or maybe investing in a security like Coca-Cola, just below 3% of an investment. So whatever the lump sum is you put in, you get about 3% back on a quarterly basis over an annualized return of 3% on whatever money you invest. Those are small, those are modest, those are relatively risk adverse. You can even put it in bonds now and make 4.5%, 5% guaranteed over the short-term bonds. And those are rather risk adverse. And they're a little bit more risk than just burying it, but at least they're a return on an investment, they're interest. Hey, even the wealthy man who gave the one talent complained to the person who just buried the one. At least you could have given it to the bankers and I would have gotten interest on this. Instead, I lost money. Because when you just save money back and you don't do anything with it, with inflation at 6, 7, 8, 9%, and real inflation in the upper teens, yeah, you just bury things in the ground and you're losing money every single day that it's buried. Now, the alternative to a value investment, like a dividend stock, is a growth investment, something that is much more volatile, much more risky. And that means that we are a little bit more active and engaged, and we expect to get the growth or the upside for an investment. Now, by the way, those who manage big amounts of money and put in, for example, in business startups and fund entrepreneurs or first round funding or angel investors, when they do this, they expect maybe 1, 2, or 3 of their investments to really pay off exponentially. And they credit a lot as a loss. That is, they don't expect everything to be a win. And that's the other part of the investing, of saving and investing, that really we should get a handle on, and that is that not only is there risk, but we don't expect to bat 1,000. The other component to investing is that it's not short-term, it's long-term. So it's not like saving, I'm keeping back, but it's putting it to work. And one of the best bits of advice I've heard about this is that you need to separate it from things you have access to. whether it's freezing your credit cards or cutting your credit cards in half, or whether it's creating another bank account like a savings account in the bank where you hold a checking account, you pay all your bills online. Even better, use an outside fintech so that you transfer your money from your readily accessible money to an account that it takes a couple days, couple business days to access your money, and then an investment account. And then you continually put distance between what you have access to today and what you have invested. Now that distance means that it lives in its own world, on its own calendar, in its own time frame, and you're not expecting it to make a return tomorrow. Let me tell you a story. So when I was younger, I went to the horse racetrack with a bunch of friends. And I took a little bit of money, a couple $100, and I said, all right, I'm going to invest a couple bucks on each race. I'm going to have some fun, eat a hot dog, drink Coca-Cola. It's just going to be a great day at the races. Came close to about middle of the day, and I decided, this is stupid. I'm going to bet on a long shot. Last Kitty was the horse's name, and it was a 30-1 shot. It was the highest odds in the race. Everybody else was 1 to 2, 2 to 1. It was amazing. And I put down $10 on Last Kitty. I figure, all right, I'm just going to risk it. And Last Kitty won the race, which meant I made a couple $100. It was the worst thing that happened to me. Why? Because I thought, hey, I can just take these risky bets, these flyers on penny stocks, and I can just make a bunch of money, and it's just going to rain money. And that taught me the worst lesson at all, and that is that somehow I should expect these exponential wins out of just gambling the money. And that's all that it was, gambling. I had no idea Last Kitty was a good runner on a wet track or a muddy track or whatever kind of track it was that day. It was the worst thing for me because it taught my brain to think in a skewed way. So the basics are: save a chunk for emergencies. Pay yourself first before you start writing other people's bills for things that you pay for. Pay yourself first. Start with 10%. That's the easiest advice. I've given myself a raise each year over the past few years. But that means living on less than my take home rather than just letting my amount of money that increase my standard of living. That means keeping my standard of living the same. That reminds me, also live on less than you make. It's the old 50-51 rule I learned in grade school. If you make 50, don't spend 51. Live on less. And the less you live on is the money that you invest, and you let time become your friend. Oh, one more thing that comes up. Remember that story? The man who was wealthy gave money according to the performance or the track record of the 3 people that he entrusted with the talents. And he gave the one who did better more. Now, here's the lesson from that. That is, when we look at our investments and we see something is really performing well and something is underperforming, the tendency for a lot of us is to try to get winners, make winners out of all of them. So we'll pour more money into the underperforming investment, and we'll try to make that just as successful as the one that's winning for us. And it's the worst investing mistake that we can make, and that is that we think that we can turn everything into a winner by just throwing more money at it. Some things are not going to be winners, remember. You're not batting 1,000. So instead of trying to make winners out of everything, learn what's working and do more of what's working. Whether it's investing in that more or something similar to it or a sector or something that it represents, yes, find out what it is that's working and do more of what's working. Why focus on what's not working and trying to do more of that? I want to share with you something I learned later in life. I learned part of doing my own do-over. And it's a bit of wisdom that it takes discipline to embrace, takes discipline to live out, but here it is. We really do have more time than we think. I know we're panicked because we blew things blew up on us. We've lost time, we're not 18 anymore, and we're in the midst of our do-over and we think, I've got to make it work and it's got to happen right away. No, we've actually got more time than we think. And the more patient we are in putting our investments to work for us, the more we will get the upside from those investments. And the more we react in panic and negatively and just retreat to saving and hoarding or protecting, the less exposure we have to the time that we do have. And realizing that we have more time than we think gives our investments the time they need to actually work for us. So it's time to ask a serious question of yourself. The moment of self-reflection, and that is, are you a saver or an investor? Are you stuck in a scarcity mindset, playing a zero-sum game, blaming other people for your failure to have a future? Or are you willing to invest in yourself? Are you willing to change the way you tell your money story so that you actually put it to work in its own little world and let it perform and give it the time it needs to become something that will benefit you in the future. How about you? Which one is your story? And thanks for being part of the Do-Over Show. Please, could you tap the like button because it really helps. And while you're down there, how about you subscribe and ring the notification bell so you don't miss the next episode of the Do-Over Show. I'm so glad you found me and I found you. Thanks.